everybody. Good morning. This is your host, Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about thought soup. All right, hello, everybody. I am glad to be with you today, or tonight, or this morning, whatever time of day it is for you. And today we're going to talk about something called thought soup. I think I went over this a little bit in the Logic Fusing podcast, but I wanted to break this out as a concept because I think it's been important in my life and it deserves its own attention. But there was kind of an example of this in the Logic Fusing podcast because I was talking about cooking or something like that. So you can go check that one out if you want to. But basically, we're going to jump right into it. And the idea here is that there are some things that you can learn and immediately understand. Some stuff, as soon as you hear it or as soon as you see it, you're like, yes, I got it. And it's easy. But there are other things that take time. And if you want a good outcome or if you want actual understanding of the thing, then you can't rush the process. I remember when I was little and I was learning how to cook, and there's some stuff you put in the oven, like when you're baking, and you would have to bake something for like 60 minutes at 350 degrees. And me, as a small child, I was always trying to be like, well, what if you cooked it for 30 minutes, but at a higher temperature, like 450? And I remember being fairly convinced that you could find a time and temperature ratio that would make things go faster. And I burned a lot of stuff and put the smoke detector on a lot. So shouts out to my mom who let me do that kind of stuff and learn from my mistakes, because it lets you guys listen to these examples. But at the time, it was just me taking ingredients and turning them into ashes and burnt stuff. But what I'm saying is, just like with baking, how you can't just turn the temperature up and have it be able to cook for less time. You have to actually take the time that is recommended in the recipe in order to make the thing. There are certain ideas, certain concepts, certain things that we learn or have the opportunity to learn that take time, that need to sit for a while in order to be ready. And sometimes they need to sit under certain conditions. So sometimes you need to think about them for a certain while. Sometimes you need to stop thinking about it for a certain amount of time to let it kind of set or gel or what have you. And basically what I'm saying is sometimes there's right or wrong conditions, but more importantly, certain ideas just take time. It's not that you're stupid and you can't get it immediately. It's not that you're incapable of understanding it. You may have all the tools you need. You may have all of the ingredients to make this dish, but you need to wait. You need to let it marinate. You need to let it simmer. You need to let it bake. You just let it sit in the oven or just let it rest. Like sometimes you finish cooking it and you got to just let it rest on the counter for a while. And if you don't do that, it doesn't let the dish finish cooking or baking or whatever. And the reason that this episode is called Thought Soup is because even though I used that baking reference before, because that used to happen to me a lot, and I was pretty stubborn about finally accepting that maybe there's a reason why there's this time and temperature in the recipe. Even though I gave that example before, I really like to think of this in terms of soup. And it kind of goes like this, where as we go throughout our lives, we pick up different ideas, we have different experiences, and we hold these things in our memories. We have, all these thoughts and stuff swimming around in our memories. And it's kind of like I'm stocking my kitchen with different pots and pans, with different like mixers and different foods. I'm putting this memory or this experience. Oh, it's like milk, and I put it in my refrigerator. Oh, it's like pasta, and I put it in my pantry. Oh, this is like a spatula, I put it in my drawer. And so I'm stocking up all these things in my mind over time. And there come situations where I want to put things together and certain concepts start connecting. And that's kind of like me taking out different ingredients, me taking out a knife and a cutting board, me taking out, the different things I need to make a dish and starting to put them together and starting to cut or starting to prep or blend or do the different things that I need to do to make whatever dish I'm trying to make, to bring these ideas and these thoughts and these experiences together to create a new thought or a new way of thinking or a new perspective. And this can take skill, where sometimes the reason that you're not able to put things together is maybe you don't have the right mixer to mix. Like maybe you don't have a blender, so you can't make smoothies. And the whole reason, you have all the ingredients to make smoothies, but you never had a blender. And sometimes that's why the thoughts don't come together and make this new thought, or you're not able to understand or empathize with somebody because you don't have that experience, you don't have that tool, you don't have that blender. But other times maybe you're lacking an ingredient, or you're just in the process of making it. And that's kind of what this episode is about. It's about the process, and to be patient with yourself and to not get frustrated and give up just because something takes time. Even though I know I'm being a hypocrite when I'm saying this, don't turn the temperature up to try and cook it for less time and then end up burning all the stuff that you worked to get, and then getting a bad outcome and saying like, oh, well, this is wrong, or I knew I shouldn't have tried this, or this is too hard for me. Sometimes you're just rushing the process, and that's why things are not going well. And what you need to do is take some time to step back and be patient and let things happen, which I really don't like doing myself because I want everything to happen now. And I think a lot of people want everything to happen now, but sometimes to get that slow cooked flavor, to get that marinated flavor, you gotta marinate it overnight. You can't do it for 5 minutes. It needs to happen for hours and hours. And like to get cheese, like to get good cheese, it could take a year. To get good wine, it could take years. And that's what you have to do. You can't make that level of wine, or you can't make that level of cheese, or that level of whiskey or whatever in one day. There's a process that takes time. And there's different forms of the process. There's like there's like marinating and cutting and prepping. There's this part in the middle where you're cooking it and like you bake it for a certain amount of time, and then there's the part after where you got to let it sit or be in the bottle for a while and do its thing. And all of those are just part of the process, and it's not something that's saying you're lazy or you're dumb or this or that. It's just that's what it is. And so back to the example that I'm trying to put together in this episode. You got your stuff out on the counter of the kitchen. You're chopping up your vegetables and whatever because we're making soup, remember? And you have your different ingredients. You put them in your pot. You turn the fire on, and the pot's like, get heated up, and it's boiling and stuff. And you're not done. Like a lot of the soups that I've made, or a lot of the things, I think this works the same for stuff that you would put in a crock pot. Like, you gotta cut stuff. Sometimes you cook stuff, you sear it, and then you put it in the soup or whatever. Or you cook something and you put it in the soup. You mix everything together and you heat it up. And normally I heat up my soup to like a boil. And once it's boiling, and it's boiled for a little bit, maybe like a minute, 5 minutes or whatever, normally I turn the fire down really low and let it cook on a low heat for a long time. And if I don't do that, then like the beans because I normally cook with like dried beans and stuff like that, the beans they'll be like hard and crunchy and gross. You gotta let them sit in there. But if you have it at a high temperature, then you're gonna dehydrate all your like all the water is gonna steam out. It's gonna burn everything, and you gotta keep adding water and all that stuff. And then it's like I think it just works a lot better when you're patient and you just let it happen at a speed that makes it good without you having to play with all this different stuff and try and make it work. Like it works right at a certain speed easily. And although I do think you can rush certain things in your head and you can try and force things to make sense, I think you lose out on a lot of the subtle flavors and the notes that you would taste and the wholesomeness of the food or the idea if you just let it sit and let it marinate or juice or set or whatever word you want to use over time. And in my mind, sometimes when I'm struggling to understand something and I want to understand it now, especially when I feel like there's a deadline and there might be consequences if I don't understand it on time, sometimes I have to take a step back and say, even if there is consequences for me not understanding this by tomorrow or whatever, maybe I can't. Maybe that's not even an option for me to actually understand it correctly. Maybe I do have to go through this journey or do have to have a certain amount of time or have more experiences in order to be able to do this empathy thing or maybe empathize with somebody correctly or understand this concept deeply enough to speak on it or talk to people. And in my mind, what I tell myself is, I think I need to let this simmer. I think I need to let this, like I've done the active work. I've chopped up all the stuff. I've put it in the pot. I've stirred it. I've added the spices. I've done all the stuff that I think I can do actively. I've thought about it. I've sat there and looking like a marble statue, thinking like But sometimes like thinking isn't going to solve the problem. And I know I love thinking. If you listen to this podcast, you know I love thinking. But what I'm saying is sometimes you got to relax and not think about it. You got to put it on the back burner and let it simmer for a while. And that could be years. Sometimes something is just too much for you right now, or it just takes time to develop. You gotta let it proof. Like you like when you're making bread, you like put the ingredients together and then you knead it and it's like dough, and then you just put it on the side and you gotta not touch it and let it proof or like expand. Let the yeast do its thing, and the yeast is gonna take its time and do it on its own schedule. You can't rush that. And when that's done, then you can put it in the oven. And if you don't do that, then the bread's gonna be flat and you're gonna end up with something that you didn't intend. And you gotta wait and let it proof. And if you don't let it proof or rise, then you're gonna get flat bread, period. You can't change that. Sometimes you just gotta let the soup simmer. Sometimes the crock pot's gotta be on all day. And when you're talking about ideas and your thoughts and you getting more mature or you growing in the way you have a perspective, this could take years. This could take 20 years. There's stuff in my mind that I've been working on for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and I'm still not there. I have better perspectives in my mind, or I have more understanding. I'm able to ask better questions. But to put this expectation on yourself that you need to understand everything immediately, or you can arbitrarily set some deadline for you understanding something, can often be unreasonable and put a lot of stress on you and kind of force you to create understanding rather than have understanding, where you don't really get the end product. You get the flat bread and you don't get the nice fluffy proofed bread because you didn't let it proof. You just stuck that dough in the oven without letting it rise. And so I think there is a lot of value to letting things simmer. I don't think you should just put everything on the back burner and not worry about anything, and when things are too overwhelming, just like, don't worry about it, it'll solve itself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's certain things that need a rest period, or certain things that need a gesticulation period, or it needs to set, it needs to simmer, it needs some time to do its own thing so it can become something great. It's like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. A caterpillar can't immediately snap its little caterpillar fingers, if they even have fingers, and become a butterfly. They need to go to a cocoon. They need to like chill out in this cocoon for a while until they go to butterfly. And that cocoon phase is ultra important. You can't skip it if you want the butterfly. And that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you gotta just chill on it and let it do its thing. So I hope this can help us be patient with ourselves when we're frustrated about not being able to understand something within a period of time, or trying to say, why isn't this making sense right now? Sometimes you're missing an ingredient or missing the tool, like the blender or whatever, in your mind kitchen in order to make it. So I hope it helps us be patient with ourselves, and I also really hope it helps us be patient with other people, because I think often, and I'm super guilty of this like all the time. Um, I think often when we have something figured out, or when we've gone through the process and we've made the bread, we've made the soup, we've done the thing that's taken a long time, it becomes normal to us because now we have bread, now we have soup, and sometimes we forget what a arduous process it is to make it, and we expect other people to be able to just get it right now, but we forget all the steps we had to go through and how long it took us. So sometimes we have to let other people sleep on it, or simmer, or put it on the back burner for a little bit, and that could be 10, 15, 20 years, which I know is a long time, but everybody has their own time, including us, and respecting that and letting people learn and walk on their own journey is very difficult, and it's very frustrating. And I know there's a lot of times where we just want people to understand, especially when we're trying to tell them something. We want people to understand us. Like, why don't you understand me? Why can't you empathize with me? Why can't you feel what I'm feeling? But sometimes they just can't, because they're missing the ingredients, or they need time. They need to experience it. They need to go through something. They need to let it sit in their mind for a while and gel before they can really speak to it, or really have any concept of it. So some stuff is not simple. So please be patient with yourself. Please be patient with other people. This is not me trying to tell you that you shouldn't work on stuff, or you shouldn't encourage other people to work on things, but it's something to be aware of when you're trying to explain a concept to somebody, or trying to learn something yourself, to where there's certain cases where it's important to be patient with yourself, and not be too hard on yourself for taking some time to learn some things. So I hope this is helpful. I hope that it can kind of anchor you if you're trying to figure something out, something's bothering you, and something's like not something's like chaotic in your mind. Maybe it just takes some time to settle down. But if this is a good idea, or it's something that that helps you out, I'm glad. And what I'm really trying to do with these podcasts is to help people to think in different ways, to entertain perspectives they may not have thought of before, and to try and acknowledge reality and live in reality, because I think it's very easy to not see things for what they are, and I don't think that's a shot at anybody or a derogatory thing in anybody, but I think it's quite difficult to see everything for what it really is all the time. So hopefully this helps. I hope that you are having a real day, whatever kind of day it is, good, bad, hot, cold. I hope it's real, and that you can live in that reality. And this idea, which I'm calling thought soup, or what I'm saying, like, let it simmer in your head, I hope it can help you, and I hope that it becomes a good conversation for you somewhere down the road. Anyways, this is Jordan Tremaine, and I'll see you guys next time.